First item today is Mr. Alan Reed. Is Alan here? Oh, there he is. Yeah, if you'd come forward, Alan. This is a gubernatorial reappointment to the Public Charter School Commission. And Mr. Reed, if you would identify yourself and give us a little bit of background in your discussion about what's brought you to this point. I know you've had a lot of experience in education, not just charter schools, but maybe that spectrum as well. And after that, then we'll, if you don't mind, we'll ask you a few questions. Certainly. Thank you, Chairman Lent. I appreciate it. Members of the committee, my name is Alan Reed. I'm from Idaho Falls, Idaho, and I have been serving on the Idaho State Charter School Commission for 17 years now. And I originally was I was on the District 91, Idaho's, the districts there, District 91, on their school board for a period of years, and then went off of that board, and then in 2006 I was appointed, asked to come on, serve on the State Charter School Commission. So I've been here since then. I guess I'm kind of like a bad cold, you know, just can't get rid of me. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss about the Charter Commission or your experiences there, or maybe what you see as a vision of where it's going and maybe some of its challenges? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the vision for me is I've had that experience there is we need to make sure that we're improving what we expect schools to do as far as, I mean, I get concerned when we're okay with 40 or 50% students, you know, meeting standards and knowing what they're doing. That means we still have 60% of students and children that are not getting educated like they should be. And so this has always been a concern for me. And I would I'm hoping that as a commission that we can continue to want all kids to be educated. And to help them with that and not be satisfied when we're at 50%. And so, the commission, from the time I've been on, we had 10 schools when I started. You know, we have 60 schools now that are authorized by the commission. So I've seen a lot of growth there. And we've had growing pains as we went through that. Although I think that as a commission and as staff, we're getting better at reaching out and helping the schools in ways that we can assist them and help them grow, help solve some problems that could be there. The challenge is always financially with the schools, and so that with Albertsons and Bloom, that's helped a bunch of schools come together with financially to be able to have their facilities. And so I just see the progress with charter schools being something that's really important in the state because it does give the parents that opportunity to have the choice that they want. And the students to have an opportunity if they're not successful in a regular school district. We have some great alternative programs and schools out there that if you go to those graduations at the end of the year for some of the alternative schools, it's just so wonderful to see those kids that would have been lost, you know, graduate and feel good about themselves and be there. And so I think all was virtual, brick and mortar, whatever type of charter school it is, they each have their place. And they're there to save kids and help educate kids. And so I think we're doing better there. Challenge, you know, it's always keeping up with things, understanding how to better help the schools. I think that's our biggest challenge, is continuing to move forward, helping the schools, and making sure also we're good stewards of the taxpayers' money for the schools that are getting it. Excellent. Anyone on the committee like to ask a question? I see Senator Den Hartog.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Mr. Reed, for being here. Appreciate your service on the commission and the work that you have put in. You touched on something that I wanted to ask about, and I think there's been kind of a push and pull, a little bit of a tug of war of trying to figure out the Charter Commission's role. I think going back to the initiation of the Charter Commission, it was really seen again as that new authorizer. I think we've transitioned a little bit. So would you talk a little bit more about at least how you see the role of the commission as both a regulatory entity, and you do that through the annual or the 5-year reviews, and the support role that the commission plays both in the starting up of new charter schools and kind of the guiding role that the commission might play with existing charter schools?
Mr. Reed?
Thank you, Chairman Lett, Senator Hartog. I appreciate that, because that's always been a challenge with the commission is, are we authorizers? Are we support services? And it has changed a lot. When I first come on the commission, I mean, my first instructions as a commission member was, we're hard line, make sure they follow the rules completely. And I realized that at some point we have to be a problem solver with the school and provide resources and opportunities to help the school. I mean, we still need to make sure that the contracts are being fulfilled, the laws being obeyed, and financially they're sound. I mean, we have to do that as an authorizer to help protect the school and the children. But then also, as we've been able to have a few more staff come online in the commission office, we've been able to provide more help and support with finances or understanding what needs to happen within the school, how to deal with certain problems. And so I think we have to make sure that we do both. We can't be one or the other. We have to understand how we fit in there to help the school, provide resources, and provide an opportunity to help solve their problems, help them with their problems. But we also have to be an authorizer. And so we want to make sure we don't go too far either way.
Senator Lenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Reed, thanks for being here. Kind of piggybacking off what Senator Din Hartog said, so I'm from Nampa, Idaho, so District 13, and I remember when the another choice charter school was closed. Can you walk me through the reasoning behind that? Because I know it's not my district, but it is my city, and there were a lot of realizing it was a charter school for kind of second chance, kids who needed another chance, another choice. I know there were a lot of parents who were pretty fired up about that, but could you walk me through kind of the reasons behind closing that?
Mr. Reed?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Lenny, just so I make sure, that's the one that was closed last year. Okay. It's always a struggle when that happens. Essentially, the gist of it is the board was non-functioning. They just flat out, I mean, the board members, when we asked them in the hearing, they did not even know each other. I mean, it was the chair did not know the members on the board, and they'd been there for a while, but they were non-functioning as a board. And so there was a lot of things that was not taking place within the school as far as procedures and education-wise and things that they needed to do. Now, the teachers were wonderful, and the students were being taught. The parents were happy that the kids were there. I mean, it was a great situation that way, but the administrator and the board were just flat non-functioning, which was causing the school to fail. And the money wasn't being spent right. Like I say, programs that should take place weren't taking place. The accreditation was a mess. And so that's the reason that the vote was to close that school. Nothing to do with the teachers or the students. We were asked all the time, well, can you not just replace the board? Well, we don't have that authority to go in and replace the school board. I wished we had, because that was a great school in its own way.
Thank you. Senator Summerall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Reed. First question, did you bring us ice cream?
Mr. Reed.
I have failed on that one.
Next time. All right. Second question. You mentioned that one of the important roles of the commission is to ensure that public tax dollars are used effectively. Can you tell me a little bit more about why that's important and how the commission does that?
Mr. Reed.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Summerall, the thing that we have to do is we've got to make sure that the school has enough student population to bring the amount of money in order for it to pay its bills and to keep it functioning. And so we monitor when a school first applies with its charter, we make sure that their opportunity there is to have enough student population so they bring the revenue in that they need. And they have a solution for a building. They've got to be able to take care of a building and have a facility, some type of facility to meet on. And so we actually have someone on the commission staff that's their specialty is finance, and we go through the budgets. We look at the budgets each year, particularly on a 5-year renewal. We look at their budgets and make sure that they're sound financially, and we just make sure that they're able to have enough income to pay their bills. And we've had some schools that get in trouble because they are short on cash, so they don't paying their taxes or some other things that may come up, and that creates a challenge for the school. And the staff has been very helpful in trying to help the school come up with ideas to be able to get back financially on sound ground. But mostly reviewing their budgets. I guess that should have been my quick answer as we watch those budgets.
Senator Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Reed, I was wondering if you could describe for me the staffing of the Charter School Commission. I'm also on JFAC and I'm looking at the budget as well. So could you describe to me what kinds of tasks they do, what changes you're contemplating in staff and those sorts of things? Mr. Reed.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and Senator Herndon. Yeah, the staffing. Essentially, we have to, in the renewal process that we're required to do, we go through their budgets. We have to make school visits. We have to monitor their academic programs and how the board is functioning, as well as how the teaching is taking place within the school. And so, like I say, we have a specialist for finances. We have specialists for curriculum and procedures within the office, and also the director to make sure things are all coming together. In 2006, when I was first on the commission, we had 10 schools, and we had the director and a secretary. Now we're at 60 schools, and so the ratio, we're kind of still staying in line where I don't feel like we're overstaffed with the staffing that we have right now. There has been a request for 2 more positions. Again, those are more specialty type of positions to take care of curriculum and monitoring the things that we need to do. A lot of it is to provide support for the schools. As we've gained staff, what we've been able to do is provide more support. When we had just 1 or 2 in the office, all we could do was keep up with making sure that all the boxes were being checked legally. Now, with the extra services, they're able to go out, visit the schools more often, provide more resources and opportunities, I believe, to help the schools.
Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Reed. Appreciate you being here and for your insight on things. My question is this: what do you believe is or what goals have you set forth or will have to help improve student achievement and to be able to make sure that we have kids that are doing better in school, better in their education?
Mr. Reed.
Chairman Lant, thank you, and Senator Nichols. That for the students to be able to progress and meet standards better and learn how to read and do math, I think we've got to make sure that we have the right curriculums in the school. The research that I have done and meetings I've attended, I think it's just critical that as a state, as an education on a whole, that we understand that we need to make sure that learning takes place. And a lot of times, sometimes a curriculum, whether it's reading or math, it's a very popular curriculum, but sometimes it doesn't meet the goal for the students because we're only at 40% of learning happening there. And so we need to be aggressive in understanding what curriculum is best to help these students learn, and that we have the support within the school to help them make sure that learning is taking place. I don't have a bullet point answer for you because it depends on the school, and it depends on the demographics of the school and what their focus is at the school. Although we should have a goal of better than 50%. To me, that's our problem. Is our goal is too low. Why don't we have a goal of 80% or 90% as a state? I think you're only going to meet your goal, and our goals are too low. That's the first thing to me that has to happen as a state. We have to say, we want 90% of the kids know how to read and do math. Well, we're way under that, and we don't take it serious enough.
Follow up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. So to piggyback on that as well, I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the discussion that's going on in different districts, not only in our state, but in other states in regard to social emotional learning and transgender sex ed, that sort of thing. So what are your thoughts on that? And do you feel that we really just need to get back to curriculum and actually reading, writing, arithmetic type style, and if that will help in performance and getting our students learning again?
Mr. Reed.
Mr. Chair, Lant, thank you. Senator Nichols, I appreciate the question because children have to feel secure. Now, we can provide an opportunity for them to feel safe and secure and still focus on reading and math. We have to focus on reading and math. I mean, we have to have a safe school, so we've got students safe when they walk in that building, and they've got to feel like they're safe. The focus of a school has got to be teaching kids how to read and how to do math. I'm not sure that answers your question, but.
Senator Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Reed, going back briefly just to the staffing again, can you just describe for me how the commissioners and the staff interact? What kind of oversight do you have? What kind of working relationship do you have?
Mr. Reed.
Chairman Lant, Senator Herndon, essentially the staff puts together all of the pieces of the puzzle for the schools and how the schools are doing. As a commission, they provide us with a packet, all the information. I mean, we deal more with the director, with Director Thompson, and she takes care of her staff. And so the director gives us the reports each week on what's going on, certain things that are happening within the schools. The staff prepares the packet for us for our meetings, and then it's up to us to take, a couple weeks before our meeting to go through that. If we have questions about anything within the packet, we can call the director. We'll talk to other staff members. Essentially, they're a support for us and organize the commission for our meetings, so we get the information that we need so we can make a good decision. There's not a lot of we work with the director, and the director puts the stuff together for us.
Senator Den Hartog.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one last question, and this is more just a question of whether or not this is something that's on the Commission's radar, something that has historically been a conversation ever since the inception of charter schools here in Idaho has been, our charter school is the incubator of ideas, and then we see these ideas grow and flourish outside of the charter system, as it were, and then go into what we see as our traditional schools. There was some frustration during the pandemic. I had heard from several virtual school leaders that, when a lot of our traditional schools went to online learning, they're like, no one's contacting us and asking us how to do things. And we've been in this space for a long time, and we're experts. We know how to engage kids. So my question is not really specific to what happened in the past, but if it's something that's been on the Commission's mind about how to facilitate that flow of information, that flow of learning of what's working in the charter space, and how to facilitate conversations or that with the traditional schools. Is that something that is on the radar of the commissioners?
Chairman Reed.
Chairman Lent, Senator Den Hartog. It's a great question, and yes, that there should be a mix of ideas, sharing of ideas there to help each other with things that could happen. It's always a topic that comes up, during the year of how do we do this, but for some strange reason, it's a bigger challenge than what it seems like it should be, and we're happy to share anytime. For some reason, that is difficult to mix, districts and charter schools together for some reason. I don't have a good answer for you. I wish we did, but it's been more difficult than what it should be.
Thank you. Senator Lenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Reed, since we have you here, thought I'd ask you this question. Given recent, especially last summer, 2022 Supreme Court decisions, would you ever vote to, and why or why not, approve a sectarian public charter school?
Mr. Reed.
Chairman Lent, Senator Lenny, we have to follow the law and the statute, and so the only way we could approve a school is if the law allowed that to happen. So I can't speculate that we would vote one way or another when right now the statute's pretty clear on what a school can and can't do as far as religion is concerned. It's been some time ago we had a school that was using the Bible as their curriculum, and of course that doesn't follow statute and it's not allowed within the state of Idaho, and so that school actually was closed. So my opinion doesn't matter much. My only opinion is we have to follow what statute tells us we can and can't have as far as religious teaching within the school.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions, so we appreciate you being here. We'll vote on this tomorrow, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Committee, we now, Senator Den Hartog was talking a little bit about that innovation innovator, I think, is maybe perhaps along those words, and charter schools. And I think we're going to have an opportunity to see one of those in action. And Monica White, she's the CEO of Elevate Academy. We'll ask her to come forward and present about Elevate Academy, which is a regular public charter school.
Is this on? Yeah, we're good. Well, Chairman Lent, committee members, thanks for having me. I had the pleasure of speaking this morning as well and sharing what we're doing with our school, and it's a pleasure to be here. Just a little history about myself before I jump into this. And this morning they said 10 minutes. I think I took an hour. So I'm you just give me the nod like, out of here, right? And I got you. Half of that was questions, though, I will say that. But just a little history about myself. I am a longtime educator. I've been in the Idaho public education system since 1999. I taught, and then I actually have seen education from every lens, from being a union president to an assistant superintendent to principal at several different levels. And it was from that experience that Elevate Academy was born, because my last stop was at an at-risk school in Caldwell. We were an alternative education campus in the community. And we would get to the point of the year where we would graduate students, and we did everything the state said. We'd dot every I, we'd cross every T. We'd done it. We were there. As far as an alternative education campus was concerned, our data looked really well. And then when we get to graduation, and the two people that would be really disappointed in what was going on was my co-founder, Matt Strong, and myself, because we'd go to every single student and say, what's next? And none of them could answer that question. I don't know. Maybe I'll find myself for the next 6 months. Going to try to figure it out. And we were like, we have failed these students. And so with that, and shortly after, a couple years of kind of fighting that battle and trying to figure out what would be next, we were challenged to build a charter school. And we laughed at them and said, we hate charter schools. Do you know who our parents are? They're probably rolling in their graves right now knowing we're having this conversation, because we're all generational educators. And, we sat back and we studied and we learned and we educated ourselves on what this meant, and to really be able to serve the students that we knew needed, the ones that don't have a voice, who don't have the parents Googling what's the best fit for my child. We found the opportunity within this lens to really, really help the students that were essentially falling through the cracks. So that's how Elevate was born. Now I'm not working on this thing. Maybe. Is that the secret? No. All right. So our mission is to offer at-risk students throughout the state access to outstanding career technical education that inspires, engages, and ignites their passion. This picture is everything to us. This is our brand promise, that at the end of the day, every student that leaves Elevate Academy has either a college opportunity of some kind, a place that they belong in the workforce, or they've gone to the military. In the picture you can see we called our 80 for 80 board, and that's students signing that they've completed their next step and they're ready to go on in that next step, and they have a job secured. And when we say a job, we really work hard to match students with a job that pays between $20 and $30 an hour, has a 401k and full benefits. So it's not just a place, it's a career. It's a way to become a solid contributing member of our society. Okay to keep going?
Ms. White,
Yes.
could you explain the names that are on the board? What does that represent?
Yeah, so on the bottom of the board, we write down every single senior's name when the year starts. And as the year goes on, we have a full-time career placement coordinator that works with the community and works with the students to line them up and match them and pair them with the trade or whatever their next step is. And we track that for every student, and it's a celebratory ceremony every time a student's name goes to the top of the board. So it's a big deal for us. Thank you, Chairman Lim. Oh, we're working now. So the core tenets at Elevate, we try to live by these, and the reason is, having been in a traditional public system, what we experienced was every time a new superintendent started, the entire mission and the entire direction changed. And that's really hard to keep up with as an educator. So this is our promise to stay, this is our North Star and our compass to keep us set. Community driven means we have a school now in Caldwell. We have a school in Nampa. We have a school in Post Falls. And on Wednesday, I get the bids for the Idaho Falls campus. So we're really getting close to breaking ground on the Idaho Falls campus. But the CTE offerings in each community are based on the needs of that community. For example, we're working with a company in Idaho Falls in the potato processing world that needs CNC, people that can run CNC machines. So it's going to be one of our big programs there. And up north, we do some drone work. They do a lot of aerospace work up there. So it just kind of gives you a vision of our different stuff that we can do. Obviously, we're career tech focused. Beat the odds. That's a big deal to us. We're working with students that the odds were fully against them. And so we make sure that we're always going and knocking on doors and finding the students that need us most, and continuing to do everything for what we can for the students that don't have that voice out there shouting for them. Opportunity for me, this is a big one. Research shows, especially students in poverty, they never leave that 10 blocks radius that they live in. We really work to find opportunity all over the place for students. My kids are lucky. They get to ski, they get to travel, they get to do all these things. As my own children, many children don't have those opportunities. So part of the focus of our school is how can we help students see what's out there beyond that 10 block radius. We work really hard to do that. Then this is the big deal to us as well. We're mastery based, so we meet every student where they are. And then we've taken all the math, science, English, social studies curriculums, and we've crosswalked them with the career tech ed so that students are learning everything with a purpose. So, we're past the days of why do I need to learn this math standard? And we have to say, well, because the state says so you can pass a test. You have to learn it because you're going to be in the shop in a little while, and that Pythagorean theorem is going to help you build that shop that you're building, or the fence that you've got to put in, et cetera, et cetera. So we've spent many hours really, really developing a purpose behind the curriculum so that students have meaning attached to their education when they come to us. This is, kind of where we landed on why elevate, right? And we really broke down and looked at the problem that many of Idaho's students aren't graduating, or the 81% was the data at the time that we put these slides together. And then we were looking at the shortage of talent in Idaho's economy. When we were at this point, the mayor of Caldwell actually challenged us to go visit all the local businesses. We toured over 80, asked them what they needed out of the workforce in the next 5, 10, 15 years, and really built our school around the advice that we were given from local community leaders. So then our vision for graduates is that they graduate with 2 industry certifications and a high school diploma. And we really try to hold on to them until that point to make sure that they're really ready to go. If they don't have a place to go and they haven't signed that 80 for 80 board, we essentially tell them you're not going to graduate until we get you all the way through. Because we really believe that it's our mission that when students leave us, they have a plan to go out into the world and be contributing positive members of their community. So our current impact, this is fun stuff to talk about. We had 79 students, it says graduating, I need to change the slide, that walked across the stage last year. 77 graduated, 2 did not. But we're counting them in that number, and I'm going to tell you why. The two that I'm referring to, I'm going to get to one in particular, came to us at 18 years old and had 4 credits. It takes 46 to graduate from high school. Was on an IEP, was severely behind, obviously, in the education, enrolled in school, and then we didn't see him for days. We did a home visit and found him babysitting his siblings. So he wasn't come to school because he was babysitting his siblings. So we worked to get the daycare lined up for the siblings so the student could come to school. Knowing that he was that credit deficient, that's where we take the ding on graduation rates. So when you read graduation rates and they lower, it's because we're taking the kids that a lot of people won't take to make sure that we can get them to that next level. So then we get them into this particular young man picked up on welding. Like I've never seen a kid picked up on welding, and he could run a bead almost as good as his teacher within months. And we kept him in that welding shop as many hours a day as we could. We worked really hard on his reading because I don't believe any kid should ever get taken advantage of in life because they can't read. And then we got him his driver's license. We worked to get his driver's license so that he could go out and be on his own once we were done. So we did that with him for 2 years. He now works at a trailer company, makes $25 an hour with full benefits and a 401k. On our data that the state sees, we're a failure because of that kid. We don't believe that we are. And so this is a big deal to us to really track how many kids walk across and know that we've placed 100% where they want to go and where they're ready for their next step, and we don't have any more I don't knows. So our 5-year cohort last year was right around 91%, and our 4-year was at 76% last year, which is really good for alternative education campuses. This data was compiled by, it was third-party compilation done by the A-Game, who does national research in alternative education schools for charter schools. So we feel like we're moving the bar and doing a really good job of providing a meaningful education for our students. And just to put some of that in perspective, our first group that we had started Elevate, 75% of them read in the bottom quartiles measured by STAR when the students came to our school. So essentially we were getting a population of students that didn't read above a second grade level. This is just fun. I wanted to show it off. This is where our students went last year and the trades and where they went. Our one military young girl, young woman now, she went to the Air Force, which was really exciting and fun to see. And then the college and trade school, a lot of our medical arts students went on for a little bit more education. They all graduated with their phlebotomy certificates and their basic CNAs, so that was really exciting for us. But just to see the students out there, we have somebody tracking this data for us now, and 80% of these students are still in the exact same job or college that they left in. There's only 2 that we know of that are unemployed right now and still looking around. So we feel really good about that long-term data that we're seeing so far. So we're going to keep going. When I did this, I planned on building the Caldwell campus and sitting back and retiring in 10 or 15 years, and then kind of the need kept calling, and so we're gonna keep going. We plan on launching about 5 more schools and serving 4,500 students throughout the state. We've got Idaho Falls coming online soon. We're talking to Valley View School District. They want to authorize a potential school that'll open in 2026. And as people come and good leadership shows up, we'll just keep working to make sure we're supporting the students that need it in this way. This is our promise. There is genius in every student. There really is. And we believe it's our job to help them find it. We're going to measure what matters. I'm all for accountability. I'm 100% for accountability. But sometimes accountability has to be looked at in different ways of where you start and where you end up going. And a one-day snapshot on a state test will tell you every single year that my school is a failing school. And I don't believe it is. I don't think the students we serve believe it is, and I know that their parents don't believe it is. So we're really working to build an alternative accountability measure. We're excited about that with our Idaho Falls campus, to really look at levels of engagement and where students move and how their reading grows over time based on what we're doing, and then how they graduate and go into the workforce. So we've built that framework, and we're excited to implement it in the next few years. Hopefully I'm coming back to you and showing you really amazing results. Of course, opportunities we've talked about, integrated purpose-driven curriculum. We won't stray from that. Our biggest one is empower teachers. Teachers right now are working tirelessly. I can't even express the work that our teachers are doing without kind of getting choked up and teared up and watching how many hours they're spending every week trying to keep up. And imagine this, we take the 500 toughest kids in a community and put them in one building. That's hard. And it's hard to set culture, and it's hard to train students. And our goal is that every student owns their own journey. And we get there, and we have the system to get there, but it takes really strong teachers that can do that. And then, of course, strong relationships with families. We do that by knocking on doors and going and meeting the families where they are and with industry. Last slide, I promise. So our challenges, I couldn't be in front of you all without telling you some challenges we have. The biggest one we're having right now, facility funding. To put it in a little bit of perspective, when we built the first Elevate Academy in Caldwell, the facility was $8 million. I'm hoping and praying that on Wednesday I get numbers under $14 million for our Idaho Falls facility. That's how much we've seen in the last 5 years on facility funding grow, or the cost of facilities grow. The other big one with that I don't have up there is transportation. $82,000 for a bus when we started Elevate Caldwell, $132,000 for a bus now. So the prices of stuff that we're doing to be able to serve the students how we want to is we're starting to have to get pretty creative. Then obviously meeting the demand. My co-founder and I, there's only 2 of us right now. We're going to hire a leadership team coming up. But then it goes to my next one, talent. Finding strong, talented teachers in all of those categories, from leadership, career tech ed, our classified employees who are just amazing human beings, and then special education is a big one for us as well. Our special education population at the Elevates averages between 20 and 25%, depending on the campus you're at. Most alternative campuses don't have special education. They're kept at the traditional high school. Many parents have seen us as a resource outside of those extended rooms, and we're an all-inclusive approach to special education. And so we do things differently, and that's really attractive to parents, especially for students that are on IEPs. And so we've run into this. I mean, it's an unintended thing that we didn't think would happen if we have a really high population, which is awesome. And we're finding the genius in all of those students too, but it's a lot more expensive when educating a student. So that's all I've got. Long 10 minutes, I'm sorry. But I'll hold for questions.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to know a little bit more about, so you're saying about when you take students in that have IEPs or other issues that are going on that would probably or most likely wouldn't succeed in the traditional school system. How is that? You said you get dinged for that. Could you expand on that just a little bit and tell us as a committee what does that do?
Yeah. Chairman Lent, Chairman Lent, Senator Nichols. That's a great question. So the students I'm referring to, graduation cohorts are based on a timeline. So if you enroll in school in 2020, you have to be graduated by 2024. Otherwise, you're considered a dropout by 2025. So oftentimes when a student comes late into that game, we'll find alternative places like Job Corps or somewhere else, because once a student's enrolled in your school, they're on your books. So if that student's enrolled and you can't handle them a diploma by that 2024 year, they're considered a dropout. And they go against your graduation rate and make it look like you're not graduating students. And so we've just accepted that we're going to basically eat that data to do what's best for kids.
Thank you. Senator Carlson.
Chairman and Mrs. White. My question is, what's the enrollment there at Elevate? Is it at max capacity?
Ms. White.
Chairman Lent, Senator Carlson. Our Caldwell campus is at capacity right now with 488 students. There's a 600 student wait list at our Caldwell campus. Our Nampa campus is 6th through 10th grade right now, so we won't be at full capacity for 2 years because we'll grow into the 12th grade, and they're full. And then our school in Post Falls is also full, and it's at 6th through 10th grade right now.
Follow up.
Ms.
White, that's amazing. I have heard really good things about Elevate, and I heard that it was hard to get into, and I heard that you did take care of special ed kids, some of them. So that's awesome. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Senator Ward Ingle-King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. White, for being here. So appreciate your long service to kids in the state and for what you do. And I know how hard, I think I know how hard your job is. I've been on the foundation board for the alternative school in Boise, and I know the challenges that we see. I guess my concern here, and maybe you have some thoughts, because we're looking at a funding issue for all of our public charter schools and all of our public traditional schools in Idaho. And every time we add a new school or a new charter, it's like adding a new school district. And I guess I'm wondering how, and I see that you've got all these issues that every other school district is talking about when we meet with them. And so do you have some thoughts on how we grow that pie that we, in order to fund our schools adequately? Do you have an idea that maybe we haven't thought of yet?
Ms. White.
Chairman Lent, Senator Ward Ingle-King, I wish I had that magic wand, honestly. And part of our success is surrounding people with a lot smarter, people around me that are a lot smarter than I am. And I know that there's some options coming forward to all of you on some different ways to do that. And I do think right now we're partnering with a lot of districts because of their struggle to fund facilities, which is positive. And I'm excited about that. And what we know, and I spoke this morning with the House, and I had to go spend an hour on a finance call for a new facility right after it. And this is the baseline of what I know, and I wish I could give you a solution, is every time I spend $1 on facilities, I take it out of the classroom. right? And so for me, it's just finding that balance of how can we keep that reasonable so we're really taking care of our teachers and really taking care of programming within a classroom. But I don't have the magic wand. I've got to defer to other people for that. And when they come to me, I'll support them if it makes sense. So,
Thank you. Senator Tays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. White, I wanted to just thank you for the work you do. I think it's really important work helping those students that often struggle in the normal system. I've had the opportunity. I have a friend who teaches at an alternative school or used to teach there, and I'd have the opportunity to go in and help out sometimes. And I just think it's such important work. Often the people that fall through the cracks and get the least attention that you're committed to giving them the attention they deserve. My question has to do with one of your challenges up there, which is teachers. And my perception is that in the charter school system, you actually have the ability to cast a wider net for teachers. So I was wondering if you could speak to how that's helpful and maybe some of the success stories about teachers that maybe are not necessarily from the traditional group that we look for in the normal public school system.
Ms. White.
Chairman Lent, Senator Tails, that being able to cast the wider net is absolutely helpful. It's one of those things that we're thankful for. We've used a couple times, but at the same in our system, I think it's different than a lot. There really has to be this deeper moral purpose buy-in to have gone into teaching. So we haven't used it as much as some of our other schools have, but we have used that wider net. And also what we've learned, and we're starting to develop and get better about this, which is making us better as a system. So I'm thankful for this, is that there has to be another level of training that goes into it that's very extensive when we do it. The teachers that we have hired through alternative certifications are doing well, and I'm really excited about that. It's caused us in a moment of growth to create a new system to make sure that they're contributing at the level we need to contribute at, and we're thankful for it. But even with that, it's pretty bleak out there, and that system does not work for special education teachers. And I think that that's the one area that the state is missing more teachers than anything is with special education certifications.
Thank you. Senator Den Hartog.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. White. Really appreciate you being here. I've had the opportunity to tour your school in Caldwell, and I drive past your one in Nampa now, but I haven't been in there yet. I would ask you to speak a little bit more. I'm really intrigued. You mentioned that the Valley View School District has approached you about potentially authorizing an Elevate Academy within their district. I'm really intrigued by that. We've seen kind of a slowing down or maybe a complete stopping of districts being willing to authorize charter schools. And if I recall your history correctly, in Caldwell, originally the Caldwell School District fought your first location there. So if you could speak to what's happening in that dynamic and that relationship with the Valley View School District, I'd be interested in hearing that.
Ms. White.
Chairman Lent, Senator Den Hartog. I think what's happening is time and proving that what we'd say we would do. So a lot of people are seeing the product, and 5 years ago when we started in Caldwell, we were a concept. We didn't even have a building when the charter was going out there. Now we have a building and we have a graduating class, and we've proven that we're going to do what we're saying we're going to do. So I think that that's a big shift right there. I think there's another piece of it. We're just getting harder and harder to pass bonds to build schools. And so potentially we're looked at as a relief valve, especially to work with some disenfranchised students. The other piece of that is District 93 in Idaho Falls. They stepped up and came and wanted us to authorize us as well, and actually helped us secure land and all of those kinds of things. Sometimes it just takes one lead blocker to be brave enough to do that kind of a thing. And then it ripples from there, because I know different superintendents are talking as well now. So I think it's really about time and our brand promise, and really coming to where we say we would come and doing what we said we were going to do for the students within those communities.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions, but I have one.
All right.
I, too, have had the opportunity to visit your schools and had conversations about our proposed school in Idaho Falls, and very excited to see that moving forward. It's interesting that in Idaho we have come to accept in some ways this basically 19 to 20% that doesn't graduate from high school. And we know that population is very likely to participate in social programs throughout their life as candidates there. And we see that you are really targeting that group and turning that completely around. So my question really deals more with, we're seeing more and more emphasis on something more than high school but less than college. You're right in that mix. And it seems very evident that having them have marketable skills is essential to their success. I wonder if you could speak to that generally. We have, I think on slide number 9, 11,000 high school graduates each year that do not go on to college. And certainly some of those will eventually, but that's a large part of our population that, according to your model, is not having the opportunity to have these marketable skills. Could you speak to that, the importance of that or significance, please?
Yeah, Chairman Lent, thanks for the question. I mean, everything you just said is the entire crux of why we exist. And going back to that, students can leave us, and when you read our charter, it says the words productive members of their community in it. A community thrives if everybody's engaged, employed, is giving back, paying taxes, showing up to work, providing for their families. That's when communities thrive. So if we miss this population that chooses to not go to college, we're missing a whole subset of our population to have a thriving community. So everywhere we go, it is our passion to make sure that everybody in that community has a chance to be that contributing member. And that's really where Elevate was born from. Hope that answered your question.
Oh, it does. I just wanted to emphasize that that something more than high school is almost essential nowadays to create a living wage in our culture today. So,
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Well, you're getting off easy today.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
So thank you, Ms. White, for joining us. All right, our last find the right agenda here. Our last presentation today is overview of public radio. Tom Michael, General Manager at Boise State Public Radio, is here to address us. We'd ask you to come forth and identify yourself for the record, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Tom Michael, General Manager of Boise State Public Radio, part of the, sorry?
A little closer to
A little
you,
closer, you bet.
There you go. There you go.
Is my slide, are my slides up, sir? I don't think so. Yeah. I didn't. Okay. Nope. All right, no slides. Well, I'm happy to talk about this. I appreciate the invitation to speak to this committee, and I invite all to come tour our public radio station on the campus of Boise State Public Radio. I'll do my best to give an overview of public radio in Idaho by describing our station. We've been providing non-commercial educational public broadcasting for 45 years. Many public broadcasters are associated with colleges and universities and school districts. The FCC classifies us, FCC is Federal Communications Commission, classifies us as an NCE, which means non-commercial educational. So there are certain regulations related to that. We're considered one of the few local independent media outlets. Many of our broadcasters and newspapers throughout our state are owned by out-of-state entities. If you think of CBS, NBC, Sinclair, McClatchy, Adams, Cumulus. So media consolidation has been happening, and we are a local independent media outlet, and we're known for not just headline news, but the 3 to 7 minute story. Oftentimes you hear about public radio, and we're in the business of telling not only music, but also the science and businesses and other storytelling. To a lot of people, we're known for our civility and calm. We have 2 separate 24/7 services. So this is a separate news service and a separate music service. As a result, we are one of the few fine arts stations in the state. We provide classical music programming, and we're freely accessible to about 2/3 of the state's population. We have 10 transmitters and 10 translators throughout the state. That's 20 broadcast sites. We also, in some markets, have jazz programming and also on HD radio in Magic Valley, Treasure Valley, and the Wood River Valley. So we do have a large listening audience and popular programming. We have access to what they call the Nielsen ratings, and although on the non-commercial side we don't promote or sell it, it's a helpful tool for audience measurement. And looking at that ratings book, it measures the Treasure Valley twice a year. And we don't promote that overtly, but we have generally are in top 1 or 2 stations among news talk stations. Sometimes KBOI is on top, and in the market. And so that shows great loyalty. We also have great time spent listening, both on our music and our news station. One recent highlight back in spring 2021, we were the number 2 station overall, meaning only a country music station was more listened to than public radio news, and that shows some broad appeal. We're aligned with Boise State's educational goals as part of the Extended Studies department on campus. So we strive to extend access to knowledge and to advance lifelong learning and promote arts and culture. We have great loyalty rates among our donors. Some 11,000 contribute annually, and they're very engaged. One of the big descriptors for that audience is that they're curious. Our FY23 budget is just over $5.5 million. $5,502,754, and our appropriation, our FY23 appropriation, is $395,454. We're considered a medium-sized station among some 400 public media stations. Our staffing is 27 full-time, 6 part-time, plus student interns. And a lot of our students have gone elsewhere into national media outlets, which has been exciting. We've been asked to address how we manage our donors, individual and business, and we have business underwriters, not advertisers, so because we are regulated as non-commercial radio. We publish a list of all of our underwriters freely on our website. Of course, you can hear them announced on the air. And with our community service grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, we're prohibited from sharing specifics regarding local donors, including underwriters whose messages are contractually regarded as donor acknowledgments. So these are handled not as advertising, but as donations due to FCC restrictions on non-commercial radio. So to explain, we're a little bit more regulated in how we acknowledge business underwriters. We can't do calls to action. We can't accept political ads. You won't ever hear, come by today for the a discount on the best chicken sandwich in town. It's not something you'd hear on our airwaves because of those restrictions. In contrast, there are some national radio broadcasters with outlets here. I know Cumulus had one of their best years recently. And a lot of times, this is because they can accept political advertising. And especially, as you know, in battleground states, there's a lot of flood of campaign money, and we're prohibited from all of that. So our business messaging is rather uncluttered, and we're considered commercial-free airwaves. I was asked to share more about journalism and our code of editorial integrity, which is also available on our website. Our code of editorial integrity outlines our policies on transparency and fundraising, avoiding undue influence, and consistent editorial standards. And I'd like to read one section from it. Our purpose is to support a strong civil society. We seek to serve that purpose by increasing cultural access and knowledge, extending public education, and strengthening community life. Our national partners all subscribe to similar codes. You can find similar language at PRX, NPR, APM, BBC. Those are some of the national programmers we purchase. We're a critical part of the emergency alert system that's called the EAS, and this is a big piece for us. On all of our 20 channels, we're a source for national alerts. We're considered a local primary, which is an LP1 for Southwest Idaho local operational area, which means our stations, KBSU, KBSX, KBSM, KBSQ, and KYSK, all feed smaller stations in that area with emergency messaging. So we originate the program as the primary, and then we share throughout. So nationally, updates like this can reach more than 336 million Americans. We also have a mission to serve rural Idaho with news and informations, and some areas of our states are ignored by some commercial broadcasters because there may not be a return on investment in these areas. But due to our nonprofit service mission and our alignment with the university, our mission of education, we're committed to the rural and the remote. Salmon, Chalice, Burley, just to name a few. We often work with other local school districts, such as the Stanley School, the Hemingway School in Ketchum, College of Southern Idaho in Twin. We also share. We share with KISU in Pocatello, that's another public radio station, plus Northwest Public Broadcasting and Spokane Public Radio, and they serve North Idaho. There are other public radio news broadcasters in Idaho. KISU, of course, part of Idaho State University. KBYI, a service of BYU, Idaho, and Rexburg. They broadcast Morning Edition and All Things Considered from NPR to the more popular shows in the nation. North Idaho tends to be served by those stations in eastern Washington, and so we share content with a lot of these outlets, and they also share back to us. It's a collegial marketplace. And then finally, live breaking news and award-winning reports. Sometimes more so than our peers, we'll carry live news conferences from state and national officials, sharing important legislative information, and the work from our reporters is nationally ranked. One of our reporters in Central Idaho won us the Edward R. Murrah Award, which among commercial, non-commercial, TV, and radio is kind of like the Grammys for this business. So it's great to be judged alongside stations from other states. And of course, important weather, wildfire, and evacuation information. We take seriously our role in citizen safety. You probably all have a personal example of a useful piece of information you heard on live radio, whether it was even a weather report. But more critically, we announced evacuation orders for the Four Corners fire last summer. In fact, with 4 radio stations up there in the West Central Mountains, we may have been one of the best sources for real-time information reaching people during that time. So a list of our broadcast sites include Magic Valley, Treasure Valley, West Central Mountains, Wood River Valley, Stanley, Salmon, Chalice, Pocatello, Lewiston. And we partner with other community nonprofits, such as CSI, Arts Idaho, Boise Philharmonic. And we feel that's part of our mission, too, to amplify the work of some of these arts groups especially. We broadcast a series called Expressive Idaho, and that's done in conjunction with the Idaho Commission on the Arts, which feature folks working in the traditional arts, whether it's flamenco dancer, gun engraver, saddle maker. Also broadcast recordings of the Boise Philharmonic. And really one of the last places that supports classical music programming. We also have a program called Sunday Concert Hall I wanted to mention, just because it's hosted by one of our DJs, Arthur Ballinger, and it might be one of the longest running shows on radio. He started it in the late 70s when he was a student at Boise State, and now with a full white beard, he continues it to this day. So that's been amazing. We also are involved in podcasts. We had one on called Women's Work, which visited women's run ranches across the region. That was hosted by Ashley Ahern. It was named one of the top podcasts by Atlantic Magazine. That producer right now, she is right now trying to break a Mustang and has pitched us a story about horses and Mustangs too. And speaking of audio on demand, if you look at a list of the most popular podcasts in the country, whether you looked at it today or 2 days ago, 2 years ago, or 6 years ago, oftentimes you'd see public radio podcasts on that list, and that style tends to be a popular style. So it's still important in this day, even though radio is kind of an old medium. The fellow who invented it got the Nobel Peace Prize, Physics Prize in 1909, and it's still relevant and still serves a lot of people at once. And my last point is I wanted to mention a group we started called the Mountain West News Bureau. It spans 6 states. 5 years ago this month we launched it. It's a multi-state news network. We share an editor and share with other public radio stations in Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico. And it's, kind of been an innovation of ours. Rivers don't stop at borders, and, ag and mining issues might be similar in different states. So we all kind of pooled our resources together. If you were listening to our station on Friday, you would have heard a show called Science Friday. And there was a spokesperson from Idaho National Lab on that show talking about small modular nuclear reactors, which was very exciting to hear that broadcast to a national audience. But with the advent of the Mountain West News Bureau and some other innovations, I feel that in recent years we've never shared more radio stories from our state with our neighbors and with national outlets, and I think that's been really exciting. So to conclude, this has been an exciting time for us, especially the last few years, and it's been an honor to be part of this public mission, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. Questions? Senator Herndon?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Michael, a little bit of my background. I used to work for KNAU, which is another university-based public radio station at Northern Arizona University, back in the early 90s. So I have a background in public radio, and I remember particularly National Public Radio at the time and PRI, in my opinion, was a little more fair and balanced than what I've seen over the last several years. And I'll give an example. During the pandemic, I listened to Spokane Public Radio up in northern Idaho, and I would categorize the programming from NPR in particular as very pro-COVID, pro-pharmaceutical, pro-lockdown, et cetera. And we were constantly getting hammered with it if I would tune in to NPR during that time. I also noticed, for example, every time June rolls around that there's very much a pro-LGBTQIA plus push on public radio. So that's another thing I've noticed. I've heard a lot of programming in the last 6 months on NPR, PRI, and local sources for your programming that pretty much is a pro-abortion agenda. And I have honestly not heard a balance on the other side. And then stories that I see published on your own website have labeled some of the senators that sit here on this education committee as far right, which, if you understand the label lynching terminology of the political process, that's become a way to marginalize some of us even before we ever had a voting record. So you talk about integrity, and I don't remember how you put it in your policy. How do we get you, because you're a public entity of the state of Idaho, even if you get funding from donors, how do we get you to better reflect what I would say is a more ideological center and even a little bit conservative cultural representation of the entire state of Idaho? Obviously, you carry the name of the state of Idaho in your service, and you also enjoy some funding that's appropriated by this legislature. Can you please speak to that?
Mr. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Herndon, thank you, and I'm sorry that you had a less than laudable experience with public radio programming over the last few years, and I certainly am familiar with the station in Flagstaff, Arizona, KNAU. There have been some independent studies. There's one each year. I believe it's called the Media Audit that looks at, and I'd be happy to find the most recent version to share. It looks at media bias throughout the nation, and it looks at the ones in the center, ones that skew right, ones that skew left. And I've noticed that NPR and PBS tend to be in that middle column. So, and that's something that I've also seen reflected in the programming.
Okay, follow up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Michael, may I encourage you, and can I get a commitment from you not to label senators in this body as far right? Because honestly, that creates a presuppositional wall on the listeners. It feeds into a presuppositional wall as to how to interpret the members of this body. And I think it inhibits their ability to fairly judge the work of the members of this body. And so what I'm looking for is a commitment from you not to use labels about members of this body and not to attempt through labeling to persuade the perception of your listeners?
Mr. Michael.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Herndon, certainly I stand before you and as a representative of Boise State Public Radio and as the general manager, I certainly do have a great respect for our newsroom and our editorial partners as well, and they also have freedoms and also the journalistic training to examine local news events in the way that they think best meets our audience. I'll be happy to pass along those comments to them.
Thank you. Any other? Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Michael. I wanted to go back to what you had talked about because it perked my ears when you were talking about Nielsen ratings. I've gotten those in the mail before to fill out, and so I wanted to find out because you said you don't promote or sell it. So how do you gather your ratings then? Do you have to pay for those, or how does that work?
We do.
Mr. Michael.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, Senator Nichols, yes, we as a non-commercial broadcaster, we work with a group called Radio Research Consortium. We have an annual contract with them, and that allows us access to the Nielsen ratings. So we use them for internal measurements, how to, you won't see an ad promoting that we're the #1 or #2 talk station in the Treasure Valley. I know on the commercial side, you might start your day with a ranker and look at how everything is doing. But we really use it just as an audience measurement and to help us make programming decisions.
Thank you.
And then follow up? Yes, thank you. And so on that note, how much do ratings cost? How much do you have to pay for those?
Mr. Michael.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nichols, the annual cost for the Radio Research Consortium, which works with Nielsen, is $13,670.
Okay, thank you.
And one other follow-up. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So on that note, then, as far as programming goes, so you pay for ratings, and then do you also pay for programming then, or how much local programming do we have versus programming that's paid for like out of the state? I'm just trying to get an idea for that.
Mr. Michaels.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nichols, certainly as a 24/7 station, we do carry a lot of national programming, especially overnight programming. And we do carry quite a bit of local programming, and also there are called local inserts that go into the national news magazine. So, for example, we might have a local 3 to 5 minute report. We might have a 5-minute newscast at the top of the hour. I can certainly look at a weekly schedule to see what that ratio might be. But I should say that as far as local programming, it's we probably, compared to some of our peers, do a great deal more.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions today, so we thank you for being here. Do you have any final words you'd like to add before you leave?
No, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. With that committee, that concludes our work today, and we'll begin again tomorrow at 3 o'clock.